welcome back to the channel. It's your girl Jewel, and today we're doing another tutorial. Today we are going to be hemming the cuff of a male jacket. So all the tools that you're going to need for this would be, of course, you need thread that is as close to as the garment as possible. It doesn't have to be the exact same color, but it needs to be as close as possible to the garment because it's going to be on the inside, so you're not going to be actually seeing that. But we do want to get thread that matches our garment. We want to take our notebook and a pen as well too, because we're going to be measuring and marking down the actual measurements of what we're going to be taking it. Of course, you need your pins, you're going to need your machine, you're going to need your seam ripper, you're going to need scissors, you're going to need all the good tools when it comes to being a sewist. Okay, so let's get into it. If you're interested in more tutorials, I have a few more tutorials linked down below, so you can check those out. But let's do what we have to do here. So the first thing I'm going to be doing is measuring the new sleeve length of the garment. We have our marker here, so we know exactly where we want to hem up to. I'm getting 23. So I'm going to measure from the tip of the shoulder all the way down to the new marking, and I'm getting 23 inches for my garment. Then I'll measure how much inches I need to take up. I'm getting 2 3/8. Okay, so now that I have the sleeve length and I have how much I need to hem, we are going to start working on the sleeve. The first thing that you need to do is take out these buttons. They must come out as long as you're going to be either taking in a sleeve or you're going to be hemming a cuff. You have to take out the buttons. I'm going to use my trusty seam ripper. Be careful as you take out the buttons that you don't make a mistake and puncture the fabric or puncture holes into the fabric or anything like that. So we're just going to take out these buttons very carefully. Four buttons out very safely, and we're going to put those aside. Make sure you put them in a safe area where you would not misplace them, because that could happen. So I'm just going to rest those to the side, and now our sleeve is buttonless. The next step now is to go onto the inside, and to do that we're going to have to turn the sleeve inside out. So on the inside of the sleeve, there is a stitching that runs, just a small stitching that closes the sleeve up. We're going to be opening that. Again, be sure to take your time when you're doing this. You don't want to puncture any holes in the lining fabric of this jacket. Okay, so our sleeve is now open. We're going to reach in and take out the sleeve like that. Next, we're going to be detaching the lining from the actual sleeve of the jacket. So the lining is separated from the jacket sleeve. We're going to just run down, undo these stitches as well too, so that we will have a smooth surface to work on. And so this is what we are working with at the point. So the first thing that we're going to do is measure the hem. So we're going to be taking up 2 3/8 of the hemline. So we're going to measure from the crease that we have here. As you can see, this is not straight. This is not straight at all. It's purposefully on a diagonal, and that is to make sure that when you put on the jacket, the hemline is not wonky, so to speak. So we're going to be following this line to do the taking off of the hem, so that at the end everything will come back the way it's supposed to be. Get some tailor's chalk, and we're measuring 2 3/8 from the crease. Okay, now that we have marked the entire sleeve, we are going to be running a stitch in this ditch right here, in this crease line here, so that we can keep the garment together on the other side, and then we're going to move from there. So before we go into the machine, what we're going to do is measure the hem to the crease to see how much is that measurement. So from the hem or the edge of the jacket sleeve to the crease there, and we're getting 1.5 inches. So the reason why we are measuring that is because we have to measure that same measurement here, and that's our cut line. We have to measure that same measurement here because that will be our cut line. Right here will be our cut line, so we don't want to cut on this line because this is our fold line. So we have to make a cut line. So I'm going to take that measurement. I'm going to do it all around the sleeve. And so this line here is our new cut line, so in case anything happens and this sleeve is probably a little bit too shorter than it's supposed to be, we have enough room or enough fabric to be able to lengthen it a little bit more. So we're going to be cutting on this line. I have my trusty scissors with me. Now, to ensure I'm not making any mistakes, because mistakes happen, I just like to check back to see the original line that I have and that it's in the same position as the line that I created on the other side, on the wrong side. And it is. So we're just going to simply run a stitch right down this crease right here. Make sure your settings on your machine is the correct settings, that your needle as well too is the correct needle. Okay, so usually a sleeve will have a stitch right here. We want to just remove that stitch so that we can open the sleeve, the seam, a little better. Okay, so now we're going to focus on the lining, and the amount that we cut off of the sleeve is the same amount that we have to cut off of the lining, so that the lining wouldn't end up outside of your sleeve at the end of the entire garment. So we're going to cut off the same amount. This is our lining here. This is the crease that we have here, and we're going to be measuring the same amount that we cut, which would be 3/4 of an inch. So you're measuring 3/4 of an inch all the way around, and then we're going to cut that off. As you would notice, I'm not cutting straight across. I'm going to be cutting, you cut a little piece into the seam and then you cut all the way around. So you're doing it individually. You don't want to cut straight across because the measurement on one side will not be the same as on this side. Okay, so we have a newly cut sleeve and a newly cut lining. Now we have to put it back together. So you're going to take your lining, and you're going to push your hand through the hole that we created. You're going to grab your sleeve and pull it out. You want to make sure that you want to get something like this. So your sleeve is on the inside and your lining is on the outside, and you want to make sure and line up this area, which would be the underarm area, to the underarm of the sleeve. So you may have to do a little shuffling around to get that done. You want to fix it accordingly so it's not twist. As you can see, my lining and the underarm of my sleeve lines up. Now, we are going to fold this. So you want to fold on the fold that we created. You're folding your sleeve up and you're pinning it in place because we need to iron in the new cuff. Sometimes I like to mark on the outside as well too, so that I know exactly where I'm folding and pinning. You can always double check, take measurements accordingly so that you don't make any mistakes. Always double check your measurements to ensure accuracy. Okay, now we're going to the iron. What I like to do is turn my sleeve back on the right side like this. We just flip the sleeve, and so we're going to be pressing out on the inside here. So the aim is to press the entire cuff. So sometimes I just like to leave my iron on the piece of garment and just allow the crease to come in. I'm gonna do a draft, an initial measurement of the sleeve length to see if we have the accurate measurements or if anything needs to be adjusted. On the tip of our jacket to the sleeve length, it's about the 23 inches. Now we can move on to the next step. Okay, so the next step in this process is to turn the sleeve back inside out. We're going to take out the pins because now we have the new form seam line, so we can take out the pins. Don't put the pins too far because we're going to need them. So out comes the pins. We are going to line up the sleeve with the lining like we did before. Now you are going to turn your lining inside. Turn it up like this. So your lining is laying flat like this, and I want you to turn it up. Hold it here, and we're going to turn it up. We're doing it on the whole sleeve. You just turn it up like that. So it's supposed to look something like that. Now we're going to stretch inside our hole that we undid, and we are going to pull the lining. So this is your lining by the seam. We're going to hold that as well as this piece here by the seam on your sleeve. You're going to put that together, hold it together, and we're going to pull through. So basically, lining, sleeve, and we're pulling it through the hole that we undid. Now we're going to pin our lining to our sleeve. What I like to do is also to go around the other side and pin the seams together before pinning anything else, because you want to make sure that your seams line up. Even though it's on the inside of the garment, you still want a neat finished look. And then we can start pinning our lining to the sleeve like this. If you get any creases, like something happens like this, that's totally fine. Because it's on the inside of the garment, it's not going to affect it in any way. It will not affect the finished look of the garment on the outside. Some things we just don't need to have to worry about. Okay, so the entire thing is pinned. Now we're going to our trusty machine and get it sewn. Now I like to fold back my garment this way so that I'll be stitching on the lining instead of on the actual garment. I find that the lining is a little bit more difficult to maneuver, and so I find being able to stitch on the lining just helps me to have a little bit more control over what I'm doing. We're going to start at one of the seams, and we're stitching press a foot width, or you can stitch 1/2 inch, but I'm going to be stitching press a foot width. Make sure and take your time as you stitch. I'm going to fold this back, and then I'm going to take out my pins. Double checking to make sure there's no pins in the garment. Now this is what basically it's going to look like. You want to just unroll this so that it's back to being even. And then we are going to push our hand back into the hole that we undid. We're going to pull our sleeve out. Look at that. Now sometimes you're going to have to stitch, before you do all this, you may have to stitch back the seam so that it doesn't create this, it can start unraveling. We don't need that. I'm going to have to do like a hand stitch right there to prevent that from happening. But other than that, we have done it so far. Now you want to double check to make sure that it is stitched properly, like it looks good on the outside, but I know it looks good on the outside, so I'm just going to run a stitch back here so that we can close up this, and then we're going to turn it over. Sometimes I'm fighting for my life with these linings. And let's examine this a little bit more closely. As you can see, the lining is staying on the inside. That's exactly what you want. You want to make sure that your lining is not coming out, because that will be a problem. So it's staying on the inside like that. We're going to have to do another press, of course, and then also too, the sleeve is not exactly level, and that's because the back of your sleeve is supposed to be a little bit longer than the front of your sleeve. So that looks good there. Let's do another measurement. Okay, so I'm going to give this another press just to make sure that the lining is pressed as well, and then we're going to move on to the next step. Okay, so it's now all pressed out. We want to reapply the buttons onto our sleeve, so we're going to have to take out these stitching here, because we're supposed to have four stitchings or 4 fake buttonholes, and we only have 2, and so we can't have like more buttons. It just would not look uniform, so we're going to have to take out the fake stitching or the fake buttonholes. Make sure and take your time. You don't want to damage the garment. Trust and believe, I have damaged the garment already, and I'm never going to live that down. Okay, so you would have noticed that we just dealt with one sleeve only, and that is because you want to do one sleeve at a time, just in case you have to look back at the original sleeve to see anything that needs to be done so that we can mimic it on this sleeve. So as you would notice, on this sleeve, the buttons are about 1 inch and something above the actual line or the actual hem, and so we're going to just take a measurement to see how much inches above this button is. Our first button, it's 1.5 inches above, and so we're going to take that exact same measurement and we're going to be putting it and applying it to this here. So 1.5 inches above is about there, and we're going to mark that there. So that's where our first button placement is going to go. Then after that, we can see that it's about 1/2 inch apart on these buttons. So basically we are going to be doing 1/2 inch apart on this new sleeve, like that. So I'm gonna get out my trusty hand sewing needle. You can double your thread and add a knot. I like to do that. And then we're gonna take our buttons that we had secured and we're going to use that now. Now you want to make sure you're going up in a straight line, so I like to make sure and measure where exactly I am placing my buttons. Usually it's 1/2 inch from the new seam. I'm going to make sure we're going in a straight line. I think that will do. We'll see. Okay, so I would used to just run the stitches and go up. I'm starting a new thing where I'm starting from the top and coming down. I think it makes more sense. So I'm going to insert my needle into the fabric. We're inserting only into the sleeve and not the lining. And I pull and I'm going to add my first button. And I'm going to do it again. Voila. I'm going to add a few stitches again and then I'm going to add the second button. Okay, so they're pretty much in a straight line, sort of. I think this one is a little wonky. Could do it with a little straightening again. So I'm going to make sure to tie off this stitching with creating a knot that's going to fall right under the button. And just like that, you have a brand new cuff and your buttons have been reapplied. Okay, let's move on to the next sleeve. Okay guys, that is it for this week's tutorial. My time tracking sheet is available in the description below. It's going to help you to track the actual time you spend doing these projects and the time that you think you would have been spending doing these projects. It has come in really handy when it comes to helping me understand how long it really takes me doing something with regards to sewing. And of course, if you enjoyed this video, you're going to love this next video. It's all about how you can hem male pants. Until next time, I'll see you guys in the next one.